Hey guys, David here and welcome to this video. So, as you might be aware already, I'm a huge fan of the Witcher franchise. So, I've been wanting a sword from Geralt for a while. So, I decided to just 3D print my own. And as you can see behind me, it turned out quite well. So I found this really great model of one of the Witcher's silver swords on Thingiverse and immediately decided that I had to print. It is already split up into many pieces, so it's very easy to print, and overall it took quite a few days to print all the pieces. But I also wanted to make sure that they're in high quality, so I printed them at a very low layer height, and that really turned out great. I also made sure that the infill on the top layer isn't just a crisscross pattern across the layer, but instead in line with the print. Now, I turned most of the parts 45 degrees anyways on my build platform, so that worked out great automatically. Otherwise, you could also just change the angle of the top and bottom layers inside of your slicer software. This kinda gives it the look that the top layer is just some streaks on the blade instead of giving it that 3D printed look. Now, if I was like a professional prop maker, I wouldn't care about that because I would fill all the lines and sand everything flush anyways, but I don't really want to invest that kind of time in it, so I knew that I was going to be able to see some of the layer lines when it is finished. I also did have to use some support on the side since the angle is not that steep. I just made sure that it's only from the build platform so that there is no support inside of the hole where there's going to be a metal rod that stiffens up the blade. So after quite a lot of 3D printing, I then moved on to removing all the support material and sanding it for the first time a little bit on the bottom just to smooth up the surface there. And then I bought a pretty long metal rod. Now, it is designed for 1/4 inch, but if I go into a hardware store here and ask for a 1/4 inch metal rod, they're gonna laugh me out of there. So I went with 6mm, which is the closest, but it meant that there is some slop in there. So I had to use quite a bit of epoxy to really make sure that it fills it up. And speaking of epoxy, that's what I used to glue up the blade, since I'm mixing metal and plastic, and that's just the best all-around glue I had on hand. I also of course made sure that all the top sides of the prints are on one side, since that's going to be the display side of the blade. As while I did sand the bottom where the support material was, it's never going to be as clean as long as I don't invest hours and hours of sanding, which I don't really feel like doing. And after it was all glued up, I just held it in my hand and was like, wow, this really feels super great. Thanks to the metal rod, it also has some more heft to it and feels more like a sword would feel. Now, I'm sure that a real sword would be much heavier than that, but it doesn't feel all that bad. And because of the metal rod, it also shouldn't break apart immediately. But it's also not this sword that I'm gonna be using for anything else than just displaying it, of course. And then once it was assembled, I did some more sanding, making sure that all the seams were nice and flush. And then I went on to some light painting. I already had used silver metallic filament to make my job a little bit easier, but I also used this weathering kit that I have used before on the Witcher medallion, and it just gives it a little bit more shine to it, and I also darkened up some of the spots. It's not that noticeable, but it looks a lot better than before, especially gives it some more contrast. And since this paint is water-based, I of course had to put a coat of spray lacquer over it so it doesn't color your fingers when you touch it. And for the grip itself, I used some real leather. I just had it laying around, and first I cut the pieces to size, and then on the edges where it's gonna overlap to create a nice seam, I made sure to thin down the leather a bit by cutting away on the backside. This is gonna make, instead of having like a huge overlap where it's a lot thicker, it's gonna be much closer to a seamless transition. And then I just also glued on those leather pieces with epoxy. And to hold them in place, I used string. This not only is gonna give even pressure all around the leather, but it also gives this very slight texture on the leather itself, which looks really cool. And that already was basically it. It turns out, while it is some work to build a prop like that out of many 3D printed parts, it isn't that bad. And comparing it to like building this thing from scratch, it is so much easier. I actually had quite a lot of fun building a prop for the very first time using 3D printing. And I might actually consider doing some more prop making in the future. But when you look close, you really do see that I didn't put all that much time into sanding it, as you can see all the layer lines. And I also wish it was a little bit shinier. The metal paint does have some like particles in it, but it didn't have any high gloss lacquer on it to finish it off, and it's just not quite as shiny. It looks more grey than it looks silver. But there's always room for improvement. So if you like this video, please leave a like down below and also consider subscribing. Also let me know down in the comments if prop making is something you'd be interested in seeing some more on this channel, and I might consider making some other things. I also have Twitter and Instagram linked down below that you can follow, where you can see some behind the scenes and other fun stuff. I also have a brand new website that you can check out. So thanks for watching, and until next time.